All right. Good afternoon to those of you on the East Coast. Good morning to those of you on the West Coast. I'm your host, Brandon Troy, also co creator of Movers and Shakers Unlimited. Thanks so much for joining us wherever you are watching our show from. Shout out to Josh and as well as to Chris. We're doing our analysis and recap of Strange New Worlds, which you just saw not too long ago. But now it is time for us to talk some secret invasion. So hope you guys are caught up on this episode because of course we're going to get into some spoilers. As I have every week, I do have a special guest on tap for you guys. Happy to have them on this week to discuss and dissect the episode. But first and foremost, let's get into a recap. All right, so in talking about what happened this week. I also like to give a quick recap of the episode that transpired just before that. So previously on Secret Invasion, in New Scrollos, Gravik reveals his Super Scroll device to the Scrolls Council, calling back, of course, his comment in the episode prior of how he would be able to deal with the Avengers. Meanwhile, back at the Fury residence, it's revealed that Fury did, in fact, know that his wife was a Skrull, and there's an allusion to in their interaction together that she may have sided with Gravik in Fury's absence. Of course, in that space between in game and the that time that he has been brought back. Soon after, Gravik shares his suspicions of a mole being in his scroll ranks. That he feels is sabotaging his previous mission. Guy, of course, is this scroll. However, she, using her wits, is able to convince Gravik otherwise that it may have been someone else in their ranks who is in fact the mole. Um, this later on there is an interaction or a standoff, I suppose you can say, between Talos and Gravik, establishing their respective allegiances, and it is in this interaction that it's also revealed that Gravik has in fact become that super scroll, thanks to a wound that reveals that he has those extremis abilities, which was first introduced in Iron Man 3. Talos and Fury are able to reconcile their misgivings towards one another, and they're able to thwart an attack on a UN plane. However, it results in a guy being smoked out and revealed to Gravik, being revealed to Gravik as the mole. And as a result, the episode ends with Gravik seemingly shooting and killing her. So in this week's episode, picks up from that moment in which Guy was seemingly killed, and it's revealed that she, in fact, exposed herself to this super scroll machine and was able to survive the gunshot wound thanks to her newly acquired extremis abilities. Meanwhile, in the flashback, we're shown Fury rendezvousing with his wife following the Battle of New York. And in this rendezvous, we're provided more insight into the inner workings of her and Fury's relationship, and how it works in contrast to her relationship or her interactions with the now revealed um, Rhodey, who now been revealed as a scroll. Which in prior episodes that we've had here, we've speculated that that he might have been a scroll, and is in fact confirmed within this episode. Because of her spy and because of his spy, excuse me, spy and espionage know-how, Fury is able to listen in on his wife and Rhodey's conversation, which culminates in a standoff once again at the Fury residence uh, she has been tasked in killing him. However, after there's a revelation of the when and why of how Vara, his wife, took on the human disguise that she did, it soon becomes clear that the Fury or his wife are able to carry out their plans to kill one another. Gaia elsewhere meets up with her father Talos to figure out next steps now that her cover is blown. Unfortunately, that interaction doesn't end on the best of terms, which also in another tragic um, moment, or I should say another tragic moment that happens later on in the episode will likely come back to bite Gaia later on how that interaction ended. Fury and Skrull Rhodey, you want to hear that term a lot, but yeah, Fury and Skrull Rhodey have a standoff of sorts, as Fury implies his awareness of Rhodey's identity as a Skrull, and Skrull Rhodey likewise counters with uh, his evidence that he has, quote unquote, evidence to be able to blackmail Fury based off of the Fury imposter that shot Hill in the first episode. Though it seems like Skrull Rhodey has gained the upper hand in this interaction, we come to find out that Fury used this interaction to be able to get the Skrull Rhodey to consume a liquid tracker. The tracker then allows him and Talos to thwart an attack on the president during a negotiation trip. Unfortunately, while the president is saved by the episode's end, it comes at the price of Talos losing his life thanks to Gravik and his forces. So, with that said, we want to get into, really dive into this episode regarding Easter eggs, about themes, about theories, and things of that nature. But first, I want to introduce our guest co hosts for this week. Um, they've been on the show before, good friend of mine. They have, brought their talents as a filmmaker in films such as Ninjas versus Monsters, uh, as well as Christmas Cancellation. As a matter of fact, they, during the pandemic, had them on the show, talking about that film. They also bring their talents as a writer as well. It is my pleasure to welcome onto the show Justin Timpane. Let me bring him on now.
Hello.
Justin, what's going on, man? How are you doing?
I'm great. How are you? It's good to be back.
Yeah, it's great to have you back, man. So, as I said, there's a lot to unpack from this episode. A lot, lot has happened between these 4 episodes. We're only going to get 6, but again, a lot to unpack. So, just initial impressions before we get into like the themes and really break down the episode. What were your initial impressions of episode 4?
Yeah, I mean, I think that 3 and 4. I think you have to take 3 and 4 together as a
Yeah.
whole. I think that they're of a part. I think that in another world they would have been a single episode. Um, uh, but if we're just looking at 4, if we're just looking at 4 on its own, I thought that the interactions between Fury and Talos were wonderful.
Yes.
I thought the battle for the president was a little silly, but it was okay. I felt like the death of Talos was moving. I thought that the use of the poem "Beloved" was chef kiss, beautiful,
Yes.
wonderful.
Yeah.
Um, it begs a lot of questions, which I'm sure we're going to get into
Yes.
on here. My favorite part of the episode, and I'll just put it out there, is that Fury absolutely told Rhodey, "I put a liquid tracker in this," and he out and out said, "Is it poison? No, it's a liquid tracker." Okay. Which that's exactly what he did, which was a wonderful little piece of writing that had me laughing. Um, so yeah, I think this is an upswing for a show that, in my opinion, has been kind of uneven.
Yes.
And I think that this is probably the best episode of the series so far.
Yeah. I definitely agree. In talking about, I want to get into Easter eggs first, like some callbacks, because I feel like that is going to segue into what we're going to get with some of the themes. And in speaking of some of those Easter eggs and callbacks, one thing that I did find interesting that they were able to tackle in this episode is kind of the aftermath of the Battle of New York. I mean, so many times we've seen, whether it's been in other shows or any of the other films, how it has impacted like the heroes, of course, what they do afterwards. Maybe they've gone off to their own separate adventures because, as we know, after the end of phase one, as we've called it, post Avengers, the first one, a lot of those heroes, they, went off world in some cases with Thor. Some they went, and did some more government work, as in the case with, Captain America. So, we have an idea of what happened with them, but it's always interesting to see what happened to everyone outside of the heroes. What did they do, in that time? And so we got a glimpse of that with Fury and his wife, which was cool. And also giving you a further detail about, their relationship. I mean, yes, they're married, and yes, you would think because she is privy to the type of life that Fury has as a spy, her being a spy herself, that he, shares everything with her. And he's, even then, like, he still didn't share everything with her because she really put two and two together about the Avengers after the fact and wasn't really privy to all that information. So he was still even holding that, from her, even though she is a, is his wife, his significant other, but B, also, you would think because she is, aware of that world and is well versed in that there would be another level of trust there where you feel he would be able to share that. So I found that interesting. Um,
Yeah, I think that I feel like this is a beat that we played once before in Age of Ultron,
mm,
where you're like, Hawkeye, he's got a wife, she's back at home, he's got a home life, and she kind of knows, and yeah, I think the problem, and this is a problem in spy stuff in general,
yeah,
is that it's very easy because of the nature of spies, to have it be that the spycraft makes them sort of unlikable, a little unforgivable.
yeah,
Um, so I loved the scene in the moment. I loved the acting. Oh, she's great.
yeah,
She's great. I mean, Sam Jackson, and we'll talk about it because there's another actor who up to this point has the series has been his. Um, Sam Jackson is doing Sam Jackson, and that's great. Sometimes he has some scenes that he really seems like he's acting, and sometimes he has some scenes where he's doing the Sam Jackson yelling thing. Um, where he's just sort of comfortable doing that.
right, yeah,
Um, but she's wonderful. She's astounding,
yeah,
and seeing her in three different eras, playing three different ages and development of the same character, probably shot a day apart from one another, right?
sure,
That she just handles what she has to do so very, very, very well. But that being said, the two of them together in that scene, I just didn't like either one of them.
cool,
I was like, oh, so he's a total, a-hole for just going off world and abandoning her after the blip. How selfish could you be? And at the same time, like, she has been using him since the very beginning, before they even met. And I walk away with kind of a bad taste in my mouth about both of them, and that's a dangerous thing to do. It's a problem I had sometimes with the Daniel Craig Bond, because he was so kind of brutal. I think when you look at a character, let's say look at John Wick,
yeah,
right? John Wick is he's always feeling, yeah, yeah. He's got this heart of like, yeah, I'm gonna do what's right.
right,
And that sort of feels that way when I see two people both willing casually to do something wrong to one another. The casual nature of the spycraft they did with each other, I understand how it's compelling and intriguing,
right,
but it sort of a scene that maybe should have made me feel more emotional. I was left feeling emotionally cold because I didn't see that you need to have a character who's like really trying to do what's right, and it's failing that, and instead I saw two characters basically playing each other, and it's hard to become emotionally invested at that point.
and I absolutely get, where you're coming from with that and how you could picture that. I do have an idea of how that kind of turn what how your feelings towards that kind of turns it on its head a little bit based on the nature of their work. Um, but going and I'm gonna revisit that, but I'm gonna go into just a couple of other ones because I want to be able to touch on those too because I want to hear your thoughts on it. Is uh, the revisiting of Extremis? I found that part interesting. I don't know if you're privy to this. I'm assuming you are because I know you keep track of the news cycle, but uh, that we will see a continuation of Stark's legacy or however you want to coin it.
If Ironheart ever finishes
Yeah,
production, yes.
yeah, yeah. With you know, considering everything that's going on now, with the strikes and all those things, of course. But prior to that, we were having an Armor Wars movie, and
Oh
so
yeah, yeah, yeah.
you know I just found it interesting that that was, something that they really seemed to be honing in on specifically. That they chose that. It could have been any type of ability that they could have decided to go with, but they really honing in on that. So using that, I guess, as a through line of something that we attribute to Stark and that franchise, and carrying it through, I guess, onto the next one with Rhodey continuing that. So that the fact that they used that was really interesting, and then also um just little details that they have were able to carry onwards with what we know about the various races, the characters, the scene that we have with what is it with I'm gonna say it again, Scroll Roadie of the alcohol use, knowing that perhaps as a scroll they have a higher tolerance for alcohol, so he's not really keeping track of how much maybe that he is consuming. So he's not really privy of, oh yeah, maybe I shouldn't, maybe that's not like or maybe I shouldn't consume all this alcohol. I'm about to be meeting the president in a couple of uh, momentarily. So just perhaps based on their physiology, they're able to consume it. So like they're not really privy to that. Same goes with like customs. That's one way that we know that even in the comics that scrolls were able to be identified, because even though they were able to copy all these various things, sometimes there's just those one couple things that just aren't quite one in one in terms of like things that are matching together. So of knowing that protocol, or that, guess you can't really say custom, but just behavior that's just not acceptable, as in among human beings, of how you interact with your world leaders. um
Well, I mean, I think you have a real sense that they don't give a
yeah,
shit. They
yeah,
don't care.
I got you.
That there's this sense that they're like they feel no deference toward a world leader. It's all, we're all stupid humans,
Right.
and I get that. So I wanted to lot to unpack in what you said. First of all, Extremis. Um, a lot of people hated Extremis. A lot of people thought it was really silly.
Yeah.
Um, it turns you orange. It makes you explode. You also are super strong. Maybe you can fly.
Right.
And if you're
This
wearing
is
and
so
if you're wearing a sports
indiscreet.
bra
It's
and
so
you jump
indiscreet.
into fire, your sports bra won't burn.
Yeah.
True. Think about it. Think about it. Because Pepper Potts jumped into fire and her clothes were fine. But all that being said, there was another power that I found really interesting. Did you catch Groot power?
Yeah. Yeah, of course. Yeah, yeah,
It's definitely Groot,
yeah.
right? It's supposed to be Groot.
Yeah. And
So,
I was gonna say hat tip to, I don't know if this is to heavy spoilers, fan of your work, man. Where they have been notifying how, just like is the case with Marvel, and I think I've had you on the show before when we've talked about this too, talking about a different Marvel property, is how a lot of things when it comes to Marvel is not one and one. Like they still keep within the spirit of what the source material is. So in doing so, if we're picturing like the original Super Scroll of it, copying,
yeah.
Fantastic Four powers, that
Mhm.
kind of, it's a Fantastic Four power. It's kind of Mr. Fantastic if you think about it. So
Sure. Yeah. That's, yeah, I think that's cogent. I think that, I don't know. They said there, what if we had a whole bunch of different kind of powers? So it seems like everyone has Extremis,
yes,
but also this guy has Groot, and I don't know if we're going to turn around and see, that someone has Captain. If that going to be the next few
I mean, well,
episodes that we just
he's
see
Cole
other
Obsidian,
powers
so we
popping.
don't know how like that's going to factor in at some point. So, and then I guess what is it, the Frost Beast, because they had that kind of that demo or that breakdown of
Oh
where
yeah,
they
yeah,
got
yeah,
their DNAs from. So, um,
yeah. I enjoyed that. I enjoyed that fact. It's fun, and I think maybe it should have happened a little earlier. The show is a Marvel show, and a lot of the times the problem I have with Marvel shows is they seem like they don't want to be Marvel shows for a little bit. Um, I felt the same way with Falcon and Winter Soldier, where it was like, well, we're not going to have wings and flying and stuff. I was like, dude, it's a Marvel show. Like the idea is that you're giving us Marvel on our TVs, and what we got up to this point is 3 episodes of it's not even James, but it's like Jack Ryan. Like you've been getting Jack Ryan, as Marvel, and then finally we got some, people glowing and Grootin and and it's finally sort of where it needs to be. But so that's the first thing I do think. So it's you keep calling him Skrull Rhodey, and I'm going to suggest this.
go for it.
I'm going to retcon this
Okay.
that for most of Marvel it's been Skrull Rhodey. I think that's going to be what we find. So this is what I'm going to think. I
Mm,
think that the public
mm,
opinion of everyone in Marvel is
mm,
that James Rhodes got in a terrible car accident and had plastic surgery,
uh,
but the real Rhodey was Terrence Howard. And up to this point, the reason that he changed is that they had just he like got it wrong. And so he was like, hey, you know what? I'm going to be Rhodey. And then he looks like Don Cheadle and he goes, well, I guess this will work. And so what we didn't see is the scenes were like, why don't you look like Terrence Howard? And he was like, I got plastic surgery. And everyone just kind of let it go because there's other things going on. Wouldn't it be great if like the
oh,
real Rhodey stepped out at the end and like the real Rhodey goes, I'm here, and it's Terrence Howard.
oh my gosh. Uh, all right, I want to get into that right now, but I'm gonna try to have some discipline and get into some of these themes. I'm gonna save it for theories. We're gonna revisit it. I'm gonna punt it back to you, and we're gonna tackle that because I have thoughts on that too. I thought about that. Um,
But
go
I
ahead.
well, I do think that I mean at this stage the I don't know how much fish out of water stuff we're having. I mean they've been around for 30
Yeah,
years.
yeah.
They're so I do think that that's I think it's just sort of a like we don't care anymore. Um it is, I guess telling to me that they I can't figure out what the plan is.
Hmm.
Um and that is also a problem that I'm having. And I
You
feel like
say
all
you
I'm
don't
doing is
picture what the plan is like of this going into the next thing. Is that what you're saying?
no, I don't get the insurgents plan.
Oh, okay.
It seems to be we're gonna kill 8 billion people and then we're gonna take the planet. And I but won't the planet kind of be all messed up at that point? Like it's you're just gonna have a planet full of rubble. There's no it's I don't know. It seems
Yeah, the
like
sabotaging thing seems
yeah.
like it's not really working. Wouldn't work in your favor because there wouldn't be anything left to actually have, even if you.
And it seems like they're just hanging out in like bunkers and in the woods. And World War III would destroy said bunkers and said woods. Um, so I don't really. It's hard for me to understand. I know they want to do bad stuff, and I think this is maybe speaking to one of the problems that I'm having with the show.
Mhm,
Is that they? I don't. You want to have in a story, right? You want to know what you don't want the bad guys to do, right? You don't want the bad guys to get the Death Star plans and get them off, right? You don't want the aliens to come through the portal. You don't want Thanos to be able to snap. Right? You need to know like that I don't know what I don't want the Skrulls to do except whatever thing in that episode I don't want them to do. I don't know what their overarching plan is. And when you are 2/3 through the series, the best I can see is they want to disrupt stuff and maybe cause World War III by doing bad stuff. But they want the stuff to be super grand. And if they've got helicopters, they could just like take the helicopters into Times Square and just start shooting everything, right? They seem to want to do these huge grandiose things and they keep failing, and so every episode seems to be, let's stop them from doing these grandiose things.
Right.
But I don't have a sense of what they actually want to do. Like what is,
What is their end
if
game?
they could, yeah, if they could get it their way, what would they do? Is difficult for me to understand. But look, flip side of the same thing, that is the problem with most terrorist organizations, right? Most terrorist organizations feel so desperate that they're like, they don't think of what step 2 is. They're just like, we're going to blow these people up, and then they're not really thinking what happens when the blowing up is done.
Hey, case in point,
um
Falcon and Winter Soldier. So like
yeah,
with the
it's
Flag Smashers.
which again, it's a problem I had with that show.
Yeah.
It's a problem I have with that show. I don't understand the goal of the bad guys, and so I don't know what there isn't that underlying tension, right? If you think about Endgame, right? Or Infinity, let's think about Infinity War. All of Infinity War was designed to stop Thanos from getting all the gems and snapping his fingers. That's it. You don't want him to get all the gems and snap his fingers. If he does, half of everybody will disappear. It's super clear. It's really obvious. It's a little silly. Why does he need to snap his fingers? But fine. Like it's that's even when you're watching the little mini adventures within the movie, you understand the big thing you're trying to stop.
Sure.
And I can't tell you what that big thing is for this show. And we are 4 out of 6 episodes in,
Yikes.
and that's a
Yeah.
problem.
No, I'm glad you brought that up, and that's why I love to have folks who have been there and done that when it comes to their films, or have been involved in that filmmaking process, because it gives further insight of like what is necessary to take to properly tell a story or put a story together for your audience. So no, you're absolutely right when in speaking to
And
the point.
before I seem too critical, it's a shame because beat for beat and scene for scene, it's really well made. It's really well shot. It's really well acted.
Yeah, yeah,
The
absolutely.
dialogue, like the script in microcosm, the script like in a particular scene is really tight. It's beautiful sometimes, it's haunting, it's sad. The action is great. Like there's a lot of really positive
Good
stuff to
takeaway,
say
yeah,
about this. But I don't, you know what it doesn't have? Um, remember Lost?
yeah,
Yeah, remember Lost, or yeah, I'm trying to think of the best, or the first season of Mandalorian, or like half of Andor, right? Or Strange New Worlds. Even though Strange New Worlds doesn't have an overarching arc, it's like, even though it's episodic. Um, there's something about those shows, especially Lost is the best one, or Game of Thrones, where you go, let's say they were all available, where you stay up till 3 in the morning because you have to watch the next one,
yeah,
and you
yeah,
have to watch the next
yeah.
one. While I'm watching the show, I'm enjoying the hell out of it. I really am enjoying it. But I watched it like for this show that you and I are doing right now.
Yeah.
Um, like I knew I was going to get around to it, but there's nothing compelling me to go, I have to watch it and see what happens next. That's just not there. And that is a problem. And look, I know that I'm all over the place because I'm not 100% sure of what you have coming up, but I want to put it this way. There have been 4
I'll go
episodes.
into themes, but go ahead.
3 of the 4 episodes have ended with a main character
Die.
getting killed by your bad guy one-on-one in the middle of a larger battle happening. It's been one, two, no, I'm sorry. No, Amelia Clark
Three out of
was
three out of
Amelia
the
Clark was
four.
shot in the woods.
Yeah,
Yeah,
three out
Amelia
of the
Clark was shot
four.
in the
Because
woods.
like the second
Talos
one,
is stabbed,
yeah.
and Maria Hill is shot. And I'm like, kind of, okay, got it. You're at the end of the episode. We'll just
Raising stakes, yeah.
I don't know. This time it seemed like a cheat. This time it seemed like the last episode I watched somebody get stabbed to death right at the end. Like it's how much cooler would it have been if at the end of this episode you got a different kind of revelation?
Yeah.
instead of just like, we don't know what to do to make it a dramatic ending. Okay, well, like it's, I would have loved to see 5 more minutes of the episode, and maybe they'll have it in the next episode, but I would have loved to see it at the end. You see Fury mourning, that like that at the end is a different beat at the end
Yeah,
that
yeah,
got
yeah.
you
Like,
emotionally
you could
hooked.
still have the character death, but it didn't have to end in that moment. You could have added the extra moment
Yeah,
of yeah,
where you would shock in the last one. Maybe this one you have pathos.
yeah.
Um, so again, I feel like I'm complaining a lot. Um, but who else can I talk to about this? I'm liking the show.
Yeah. Yeah, you know,
But
I am
these
too.
are
And
these are the problems that exist.
no, no, I hear you, and I mean, no show is perfect. So, like, you know, I hear all of those, and I hear where you're coming from. So, um, a lot of what you were saying is going to play or segues into what we're talking about next is themes, and just as you were talking about at the top of the show, you were commenting on how a lot of these episodes kind of pair together more so than they do on their own. And the reason why I say that is, you know, yeah, we have titles for a lot of these episodes, but I feel like they're kind of like one word statements that you can kind of put to each episode, and how a new one kind of formulates by the end and bleeds into the next one, and then eventually evolves into something else by the end, and then that bleeds into the next one. So, like, for what I've had, and considering each of these episodes, you know, in the first episode, you know, you have resurrection, you know, of course, a fury of him, you know, making himself known among his community of spies, of espionage, and then the isolation that eventually comes into play because you have all these people, you know, are like, you know, yo, where you been all this time? Like, you know, the world has moved on without you. Like, it's kind of little too late now that you're coming back into the picture. And so, you know, he's losing a lot of those allies by the end of episode one. And then, you know, we're getting more of that as we're getting to episode two, but we're also getting that idea of war times, you know, how things are in times of war, where, you know, we're placing all types of, you know, folks in within on the front lines. And I mean, if we're thinking of Gravik, I mean, yeah, scrolls, they age differently than us, but in essence, you know, he was young when he was, you know, recruited to be a spy for Fury. He should, in if we're picturing the context of like a human being, he was like a teenager, like what, 16, 15 maybe? Even though in the context of like a scroll, you know, as I said, they age differently. I'm sure he was well older than that, but still contextually, if we're picturing, you know, within, you know, human context, you know, that's what we're dealing with. And then that actually bleeds into the third episode if we're thinking of the interaction that Gravik has with Talos, and you know that scene that they have, I guess you could say what, a museum or what have you, where you know they're
Yeah,
talking about how, you know, you have
great
all
scene.
these bureaucrats that are at the top where, you know, they're fighting over their various ideologies, but at, you know, on the front lines you have these other folks that are basically trying to fight these battles and these wars for these different ideologies of these, you know, people that are at the top.
Well, and that is something that this show. So going back to Falcon and Winter Soldier
Yeah,
and this show, this is what the show does well. This is what it's doing super, super well. It's what that did super well. The societal commentary, um, the state, that one had a lot of statements about racial
yeah,
politics, a lot about class politics. This has a lot about the difference between, the old men who send the young men off to war and the young men who have to go die.
yeah.
Um,
For the sake of
the it
whatever your argument or your
Yeah,
ideology is. Yeah.
yeah, that's, two people killing each other who don't hate each other, is and I really, really like that. This also has, and I think this is really interesting and cogent to world politics right now, because you had, there's been a lot of situations, on both sides, where America has pulled out and not been there when they said they were gonna. And this is one of the things I love about this show is it asks the questions. What happens when you make a promise,
And
and
you
at the
break that
time you
promise.
promised it, you meant it. You
Yeah.
weren't like lying when you said it.
Right.
You were like, yeah, you had every
But
intention, but other
circumstances.
things got
Yeah.
got important, and you kind of let it go.
Mhm.
Um, I love that my favorite stories are the ones, especially for Tony, were ones where the villains are the ones you create.
Yeah.
Um, and
Incredibles is
I
another I love Incredibles. Yeah, another example of that. You know, you kind of are dismissive of your fan, and they end up becoming like a uber
yeah.
super villain.
So I love things that have consequence,
Yeah,
and I love that this is a lot about the show. Is a lot about how Fury just let people down.
yeah,
He just let people down. And so I really enjoy that stuff. The theme, especially about the theme with the painting, I really enjoyed. But then the person saying it wants to commit random genocide
yeah.
on everybody, and
Right?
you kind of go, well, yeah, that's I don't know. There's the again, it would be fun to hear. It would have been great to hear Talos giving that speech
Yeah,
because because the insurgents are sending people out to die. They're killing their own people. They are the people who are offing their own soldiers and killing other soldiers.
yeah,
That's so it would have been a more if you flip the script, I think it would have been even more interesting.
yeah,
Um, but I don't know. I think that the just like Falcon Winter Soldier, just like WandaVision, the themes are maybe stronger than the execution of those themes.
fair,
Um,
fair.
and I would love to see both exist because sometimes I feel like I couldn't tell you the theme of Ant-Man and the Wasp. Like it's the theme was broccoli heads. I don't know. Um, this is the if we could have that strength with the execution, that's where you get your Winter Soldier movies. That's where you get you know what I mean.
Yeah,
That's where you get the best of the best,
sure.
and so that is something that I'd love to see come together. But thematically, that's the best thing the show has going for it is the themes. The themes are emotionally compelling.
Yeah, and I mean, and continuing off of that, you know, how the wartime ends up going to like reconciliation. You know, we're having this mending of a lot of these relationships. You know, whether it's Fury and Talos and his daughter, and how that kind of segues into sacrifice. Of course, what we have at the end. But reason why I bring that up, I want to come full circle to what you were talking about at the top because you were mentioning, you know, the issue that you were having with Fury and his wife. And what I was able to take out of that is how fascinating it was if we're talking about mhm, if we're talking about espionage and you know folks that are under deep cover, so to speak, how you have that element that normally comes into play for those who are in deep cover of getting in too deep, so to speak, where they get in so deep that sometimes they really, despite their initial intention of what the plan was going in, it's not how things, you know, finish by the time they're out of it. And so how she ends up, even though we, just as you said, the original plan was to, you know, infiltrate into the life of Fury. I really truly do believe that by the end of it, it didn't become, you know, the job. It actually became something that was substantial. So I thought
Yeah,
that idea, that
I
concept was interesting to me.
yeah, me as well. And I think that you have the themes would be stronger if the goals were clearer.
Okay.
And if I could relate, I think back to another complicated character. You think about Killmonger
Yes.
in
Black Panther, yeah, yeah, yeah.
a- and he's a character who's like he's clearly evil.
Yeah,
He's clearly killing a lot of innocent people.
but you
He's clearly his plan is to incite violence that will cause the deaths of
yeah,
millions. That is absolutely his plan. But you can
he's
understand
motivated,
how he got
his
to
point.
the point where he was able to, like, maybe if he took two steps back, he could have been a Gandhi, a Malcolm X kind of character
Sure,
but he took two steps too far and lost his humanity.
right.
And so he had a point to make, but he went too far.
Yeah,
um I would love to see that here, but again, I don't. I felt it was done better in Falcon and Winter Soldier.
Yeah.
Um, the idea of the displaced people,
Yeah.
which was where again I go to the points are being made by people who want to just commit genocide, and it's hard to know them. The point with Fury and his wife, they're the scene. It's hard for me to tell you whether or not the scenes are good on the page, because the actors are just knocking it out of the park, line after line after line
Yeah.
after line.
Yeah.
Um, which is great. Sometimes that's what you need, your actors to just elevate the material. But I know that I'm riveted. I'm not sure if the themes get across as much of like a, we got too far in. I'm so sad this happened. I didn't get that, but I was compelled while I was watching them because the actors are, doing masterwork.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, um, now I will get into those theories that I wanted so badly to get into at the top, based off of what you had mentioned. So I'm gonna put it over to you just to recap, what you had, brought up as something that was as something that I want to say was an issue, or maybe something that was kind of, you know, s- scratching away at you, that you wanted to discuss.
So are we talking about Rhodey?
Yes.
Rhodey, yeah. All right. So jokes
Okay.
aside, I know I don't think it's going to be Terrence Howard, but yeah, I think they're going to say that this was the same Rhodey we've had the whole time. Um, he is again. It's sometimes it's hard when you write, and I study story a lot. I spend at least a couple hours a day studying different story theories, and sometimes that ruins stuff for you. Um, so I can tell you why they chose Rhodey. They said we need to have an Avenger that we can say was a Skrull the whole time. So they went through all the Avengers and goes, which ones have we not had scenes with them by themselves? You can't say that it's Peter, right? You can't say it's Peter Parker because we've seen Peter by himself in his room lamenting stuff. You can't say like Rhodey has not had Rhodey is a side character, and he has not had any scenes where you see him trying to figure out what he's going to do. You're struggling to figure out what's right. You haven't seen that. um I hate when they do that with characters you have seen that with, as I'm a huge Star Trek fan, and they retconned, spoiler alert for a 25-year-old show, they retconned a character named Dr. Bashir in the last two seasons of Deep Space Nine, and said he was the whole time he was a genetically altered augmented human who was super smart and very serious. And I was like, dude, we saw him in his room by himself when nobody was watching, and he was not acting like an augment. He wasn't. And you can't do that. You can't go back and go, what
Retcon
about
it.
that
Yeah.
time when he was by himself? Rhodey has not had that moment. Rhodey has always, so I think there would probably be a number of characters you could have thrown in there who have not had a moment where they were just by themselves. You could see their interiority.
I'm gonna throw a monkey wrench in that slightly. There was a time, however minuscule it was, that he was by himself at the end of what was that, of Civil War. He was in a room by himself, I guess, tending to the room or whatever the case was. He wasn't in the room with, I guess, with Tony. Tony entered into the room, but we saw him in the room himself before Tony entered in there when they were talking about receiving the mail package towards the end of the
But
movie.
did anything happen in that room that would contradict this? The only thing I could say is maybe this is the most dedicated dude you've ever seen, because he went through like 2 years of rehab
Maybe.
on his legs.
Hey, yeah, yeah.
You know,
My only thing with that, and I thought about that too, of like this would be a funny like inside joke of how they could do the the switch from Terrence Howard to Don Cheadle. My only problem with that is, as a viewer, and I know other viewers would feel this way too, and you know where I'm getting at with this, is that they would feel cheated out of all the character development that has happened with that person over all these years. Like I understand of having it
well,
happen.
for Rhodey, what character development? How is he fundamentally different than he was in Iron Man 2? Outside of him being evil now. How is he fundamentally a different guy?
Because in essence, like in the second Iron Man, he kind of had that same ideology as the old Tony did, where he was about, the being a good soldier, of having, the what is it, the
Oh yeah,
working with
he
the
did
arms
have the
dealer and
turn.
all of those,
He
and
does have the turn in Endgame, right? He
that
does
too.
where he's
Yeah,
like, yeah,
yeah,
where he's like, I'm not a military guy anyway. Yeah, I. Who else could? So here's a question. I'll punt it back to
yeah,
you. If not Rhodey,
yeah,
if you were like, hey, if we're saying there's an invasion
yeah,
and we need to choose an Avenger to make everyone go, what? Because that's what they're doing. They want us to have the
yeah.
what moment. Who, if not Rhodey, who is a named Avenger who has a costume who you think it could be?
Honestly, they can make it. I was gonna say they can make it Hawkeye. They Hawkeye.
Not anymore.
Mm,
Not after the Hawkeye show.
hmm,
He's by himself a lot in the Hawkeye show.
that's true. That's true. But okay, so I'm gonna think on that. But get into what you were saying with Rhodey. I'm gonna go with, because I'm trying to picture a way that they can still have it be shocking enough where you know that he's been a scroll for a while, but not have it happen too far into the past of his development as a character, is having it happen. And it's been brought up before, elsewhere, which would make a lot of sense. Either having it happen directly after the events of Civil War. So he's been a scroll up through Infinity War. He's been a scroll up through Endgame. And they switched him out in the hospital when he was unconscious.
Okay.
And so he was unconscious that whole time. And when he was recovering, that's when he got switched out. Um,
Okay.
because it will provide an opportunity, like even in the transport of his body, to have them switch out, the actual roadie with the scroll roadie. Um, or they may try to cheat it and try to say that it happened after the events of what is it, of Falcon and Winter Soldier, because he does feature in Falcon and Winter Soldier briefly. But I want to lean more towards Civil War, because if I'm thinking of like how he was behaving in Endgame, where he was like, "What if we, wrap up, Thanos in the umbilical cord, like, or that, that sequence, that comedy relief, that moment, or even if we're thinking of, if I recall, wasn't it his character that tried to bow to uh to Black Panther,
T'Challa.
and that was a big scene that they made a big deal out of for some reason?
No. I think he told Bruce to
That's
bow.
right, that's right. But I'm just saying, just the
I think he
fact that
told
he brought that
so
up, because, if we're talking about, like, human, like, behaviors versus maybe scroll, type of
but even as a scroll, he's talking about a DDT off the top rope. He's appreciating the
yeah.
whiskey, you
Mhm.
know. So here, let me ask you a
Okay.
question. Do you
Shoot.
ever watch The Price is Right?
Of course.
All right, you know how at the beginning of The Price is Right, people are trying to land on exactly what the price is of the thing they're looking at.
Sure.
And the first person goes, I think it might be this. And second person goes, I think it might be this. Third person goes, I think it might be this. And then the fourth person goes, $1. Because they're like, you know what? If I have to bet on anything, I'm going to bet that it is $1. And so if you put a gun to my head and said, "Hey, please don't do that." But if you put a gun to my head and said, "Hey, I want to bet where it's what time do you think it switched?" The most likely
Is
time, if
earlier.
I have to choose one, is the whole time.
Wow.
The whole time that they're going to say it was like that the whole time because that's the biggest surprise, and it doesn't really contradict all that much
Oh,
because they infiltrate.
oh man, that
So,
I would feel so cheated of, like, everything that's, if they take it that far back, and they may very well do that. I could see how a lot of people would be like, which, initial impressions, be like, what, like, are you serious? But as it starts to settle in for a lot of people, I feel like they would feel cheated, and it may, I don't want to get it this extreme. It may alienate, folks that have been
You said
following.
alienate.
Oh man, gosh, it may alienate folks. Pun intended, I guess. I didn't mean to get that, but um, it may alienate people who have been following this whole time. Like, are you serious? Like this whole time, like we've been following this character, and they've been, who not even the person that we anticipated or that we thought that they were. So, but I guess yeah, if you want the shock value, I suppose it would be that early. Um,
Yeah, I mean, I think that I don't know. It seems like that's where they're going.
okay.
Um, unless you have the cool moment at the end, right, where you have a sweaty bearded roadie, you're limping out with the gun out, and he's the one who kills the other him, and you go, Roadie, you're back, and he goes, I'm back, and he's there for Armor Wars.
Yeah.
So
But some other things I want to touch on too, and you brought this up, and I wanted to revisit it. Is talking about extremists and what we know about extremists, and knowing that extremists has that ability to cause a lot of people to explode, and we're dealing with folks that are trying to do all these like terrorist related things. So, um, will we see that side effect of extremists come back? Will it somehow be weaponized somehow? I see you shaking your head. You thinking no?
yeah, I think that you'll have somebody get shot and they'll explode one time, and that'll be your callback to the fact that that's what used to happen. But that you counting on the idea that everybody remembers this movie from 14 years ago, yeah, Iron Man 2 is I again I don't, it doesn't seem like that would be the way that they would go. I think they've shown us Extremis, now they've shown us Groot. I think they want to show us, you know, but you know what I want to see? Here's what I'm missing.
Okay,
Here's what I'm missing. Here's in terms of
go
theories,
for it.
something I'd really like to see
Go for it.
is the revised history of Marvel. They started it when Talos is talking to Fury, going, we helped you get this, we helped you get that, we helped you get this, right?
Yeah,
and and you go, like, I would love to see the reverse of that, going, how did he get Extremis? This, who do you think, who do you think helped Whiplash develop an arc reactor? It was us. Who, when Loki was infiltrating with aliens, we made contact and such, you know what I mean? Like, I would love to see if it's a secret invasion, that was in the comics, that was the whole idea, is like everything you thought had happened, haha,
happen a different way. Yeah,
a different way. And I'm not saying everything, but I'm saying if there are 4 or 5 significant events,
yeah.
you go, oh my gosh, they've really been, the whole reason
Orchestrating
we got
things this whole time.
the Sokovia, right? That what you didn't know about Sokovia was that we were the ones that had the technology to turn Jarvis into Ultron. Like, it didn't just manifest, but we added the little push,
Oh wow.
right? And so I think
Okay.
I think that little, if you just choose 5 major events in the Marvel universe and say, we did this, 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 that would be compelling to hear about. Um 2 episodes left, and you're going to assume the last episode has to have both the final confrontation and the denouement at the end, where you're like, and now here's where we are now, and it's only an hour, right? So you really only have the next episode to do anything like that, which again, that would have been super fun and interesting, and that's just not the way that they went.
Yeah, and I was gonna say, here's something to think about too. What do you think? And think in continuing on from what we were just saying about extremists is, what do you think about Gaia's abilities, and do you think that it was strictly extremist? That was the only ability that we saw, but maybe we get surprised in the latter episode that we come to find out that she actually got other abilities as well. Because they try to make it seem like maybe she only grabbed one vial, but maybe like in that time she was able to get other abilities as well. I don't know if that was a purposeful like misdirect to make us think that, oh yeah, that's the only thing that she can do. And maybe, perhaps in her fight with, I'm assuming they're trying to, orchestrate this or set this up in her fight with Gravik, that you come to find out that she can do more than that.
um I mean, again, meta
Yes.
commentary on it. you don't get Amelia Clark to show up to be a
Yeah.
side character for like
Yeah.
4 episodes. That's not what
Yeah.
you do. And if she's gonna be a recurring character, you don't give her the least popular power set in the entire MCU. So I'm going to say that everyone has Extremis,
As a
but
base.
he started this
Yeah.
episode going, all right, I don't remember if it was this episode or the last one where he goes, we're all gonna be super. I was like, super? I know you want to say super scroll,
Right.
but like the minute you have that cow going, and then we'll be super. I'm like, super. Um, I think that she is going to have interesting things that she can do. I don't think there's any chance that she dies. Um, I think you cast Amelia Clark and you give her interesting things so that she can show up in Thunderbolts or something, right?
Well,
I
the
think
theory
that's
that's
the
been going around, and let me know your thoughts on this. I don't know if you've heard this as well, but it's been put out there, is that she may end up becoming, I guess I'm trying to think of the character's name, like a pseudo Brant replacement for what's the Shield agent, the female character. Well, she has green hair. Can't think of her name off the top of my head. I want to say her name is Brant. I'll look it up, but that she's going to end up. What's being said is that she'll kind of inhabit that role and be a right hand to Fury in replacement of Talos and everyone else that's in Hill that's obviously been uh
maybe that was the plan. Based on the ratings, I don't think they ever come back to this.
okay.
I think that because the show's not doing well. So I think that Bob Iger is probably going to be like, yeah, let's. But I think you keep her. Um, if she's going to have basically Super Skrull powers,
Yeah.
you know, maybe she is the Super Skrull for the Fantastic Four movie.
Hmm.
Um, and now you have that character, like I said before, that she's not evil, but she has a point, and now she's fighting the Fantastic Four and can do their powers. Um, but I think you keep her around. I think that she's just too big a star to just have Extremis. I think that we will see her like
Not
we
Brand.
saw
I'm sorry.
Talos do.
Abigail Brand. That's what I was trying to think of the name of. Abigail Brand. That character.
I do want to see just because this is the last time we're going to have to talk about Talos.
Yes.
I want to throw in. I mentioned someone whose show this has really been. Um, First time I saw Ben Mendelsohn
Mm,
was in Ready Player
yeah.
One, and I thought he was sort of interesting. And then when I saw him in Solo, um, oh, not Solo, sorry, Rogue One, um, I was like, okay, so he plays this middle management corporate guy. That's what he does. Ben Mendelsohn has just been so
Yeah.
remarkable on the show. So funny and sad and interesting, and if you watch him when other people are talking, he's just listening. You can see him having little micro reactions to
Hmm.
everything that someone says.
Hmm.
At one point she calls him dad, and you'll see his mouth just smirk up for
Hmm.
1 second when she says dad to him. um he has been a revelation in the show. I've walked away from the show a Ben Mendelsohn fan, and so I just want to give props to someone who is playing a big rubber-headed alien in a Marvel show and has taken the job 100% seriously. Um, I am shocked by how good he is. I don't think he's ever been better in anything I've ever seen him do.
So,
Um,
but yeah, no,
he's
go ahead.
wonderful. So I just wanted to throw it out there since we won't get another opportunity because RIP tell us.
Well, when it
Um,
comes to Marvel, you never say never. Even when characters are dead, we always keep getting these like travels back to the past of, they may revisit him again and have him come back.
I mean, hell, you can shockingly kill people at the end of an episode, and the next episode go, "Ah, psych,"
I don't know.
which is
I
what
think this
happened to
is.
Amelia
I don't
Clark.
know. I think at least for him, it may be for sure. Because if I'm picturing and just going into what you were saying, just with that storytelling element, is when you have those stakes of certain characters and trying to figure out what more the character can do. I'm really at a loss of what else the character can be utilized for from what they've done already. So I know a lot of what'll happen sometimes is when the character has kind of fulfilled and ticked every box of all the different things that their character has accomplished, they'll end up getting killed off because there's really nothing much else where they
Yeah.
can go.
And for someone who is just a side character to start
They did
with,
a lot,
like he's
a
been
lot,
given a lot to
a
do.
lot.
So I think that's
Um,
probably it
so
for him.
one theory that I will go in as we wrap up is, and I know it's been a talking point in this episode. I believe every single episode has always had, I guess you can call it like a cold open before we get into the credits. And so
Mhm.
what'll happen is they'll get a cold open of something that's recapped as a, as a, what is it, a cliffhanger from the prior episode, or they'll do a flashback.
Flashback.
My
Mhm.
theory for this upcoming episode, I have no proof of this, I haven't seen it, is that they're going to give us a flashback of how Rhodey became a scroll at the top of this episode. That I feel like because that became, even though we had the character death of Talos at the end,
Yeah.
even though we had all of that happen, I feel like the big shocking thing was not really shocking if you really have been following along, but what was meant to be the shocking thing was Scroll being confirmed as a Scroll. And so, just like you were saying, it provides an opportunity with this penultimate episode to give some insight into the MCU at large by knowing exactly when this character that we thought we knew was a scroll and at what point he became a scroll. And that's going to be our like cold open flashback before they get into the credits. And then
I agree with you. I think that it will either be this episode or it'll be the 6th episode
I'm
that has
thinking
that.
only reason why I
I
say it's not going to be the sixth episode is because they have so much to wrap up with Gravik and everything else that I feel like this would be the opportunity to do it versus like the season finale. Because I feel like they're going to take care of Rhodey in
Yeah.
the second to last episode, so that way,
There's no
yeah,
chance he survives, right? There's no chance that
yeah,
Skrull
I
Rhodey
don't think
survives.
so.
Like, because they're not gonna make it that Armor Wars happens because Rhodey's a Skrull, because you can't count on the idea that everyone who's watching Armor Wars will have seen the show.
Yeah.
So the question is, we either I haven't looked at the IMDb to see whether or not he's in Armor Wars.
Oh, you saying
Um,
Rhodey?
yeah.
Oh, he's for sure. He's a star of Armor Wars.
All right. So again, meta knowledge. Then we're gonna kill
That's what I
the
was
one
saying
and get
because
the other
you
back.
already have an established element to utilize story wise of saying, okay, this character has been miss. It's kind of like what they've done with Gamora in Guardians, where
Yeah.
it's essentially a new character almost, where because a lot of the stuff they weren't there for a lot of stuff that we thought that they had been around for. So it's them kind of picking up the
Oh,
pieces.
that could be really, that's, Rhodey is a flat character. Rhodey has not had much to do, which is a shame because Don Cheadle is a master.
Yeah.
I first saw him in a movie way back when he had like 10 lines in it, with Nicolas Cage called The Family Man.
Mm.
And he just had like 10 lines. And I was just like, what the hell? This guy is amazing. Um, so he's not been able to use that because Rhodey's such a flat character. To have Rhodey be a character haunted by the idea, like, what, half the world disappeared, Tony's dead, that gives that character a whole bunch more
Yeah.
gravitas and so much more complexity. Yeah, I agree with you. I'm going to take it back. I'm going to say that it's going to be I'm going to say it's going to be a post I'm gonna say pre Iron Man 3, Rhodey.
Oh, okay. So
I'm gonna say
you're pushing it a little further. So you're saying not right at the start, but at least up
he's been
until.
in the armor. He's been in the armor, but he hasn't been like, he was replaced way earlier.
Oh,
That's gonna be
okay.
even if he was replaced in Civil War, he still has to deal with, the large problem for him, which is the blip, and the small problem for him, which is Tony's dead. And so he's gonna have, both a inner and outer conflicts within, and I think that creates a really interesting character if you're going to set him up to be the lead of a movie. So I think
Huh.
I think you might be right. I think that might, I'm trying to see where I'm trying to think, if I was writing it, what would I do? um so yeah, you might have a point there. You might have I think you're gonna have a significant point there, and I think that you'll get the real Rhodey back by the end. You're gonna get the real Rhodey back by the end. The secret weapon is the big threat's gonna be War Machine's gonna be fighting, and the secret weapon's gonna be War Machine's gonna be fighting.
And I was gonna say the only last question, final, and we'll wrap it up is will they will the president actually be killed off by the end, or will they just have it utilized via the normal proceedings that you would have with an election in which he's out of office? Because I'm assuming you're up to speed with what's happening with the new Captain America. Oh,
Oh, that Harrison Ford is the
yeah,
president.
President Ross.
Yeah, the Raw. Yeah.
So,
Um,
because I'm assuming that all of this is going to bleed
I
into,
don't
because it
know.
looks like what they've been trying to do, and also been mentioned. So I'm not going to take credit for it, but that is kind of acting as like a pseudo Dark Reign into a Dark Reign element, where we had the secret invasion and how it like segued into Dark Reign. Except that Ross is going to
I
take Osborn's kind of arc, kind of.
which is right when I stopped collecting.
Oh, okay.
So I'm familiar with it. I mean I know the story.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's really I don't think that is answered yet. I think that right now, because Captain America are they done shooting?
Uh,
I don't think they're done
no,
shooting.
they just they weren't able to finish, and it's we're in the middle of the strike now, so
So I am gonna wager that the ratings failure of this show, because the show is a money loser
yeah,
big time.
yeah,
Nobody's watching it.
yeah,
Um, and I think that could change what the plan was. And I think that Bob Iger is stepping in with Kevin Feige and going like, "Hey, we cannot count. Like people aren't seeing the movies because they feel like they need to have seen the shows, and people really aren't watching the shows because there's too many shows." And so I do wonder if they're going to continue to hang everything on
yeah.
on the
So
Dark
maybe the
Reign thing.
election maybe happens in that movie, so that way you don't have to be too reliant on the show
Yeah.
to know that. I guess the only reason why I bring that up too is that we've seen it in the past where like something that wasn't really well received, Marvel has been guilty of this. I feel where they've tried to make those installments that people don't really care too much about matter, so they'll kind of retroactively try to make it matter by making it must see viewing. Like we had it happen with Thor: The Dark World. Like not a lot of people care for Thor: The Dark World, but in Endgame, like we have those elements that make that film matter. Like it, and story wise, make it matter.
Sure. I again, yeah, maybe. I think you can say it for Amazing Spider-Man too, right? They made the worst Spider-Man movie matter as the most emotional moment in No Way Home. So like I do get that they can do that. But I also think it's a new day at Marvel. This like the last 2 weeks. If you hear the stuff
Yeah, yeah.
Iger's been saying, I just think it's a new day at Marvel where just like you were gonna too many plot threads, too many things, that all the movies seem like they have to serve the larger thing. And it used to be that you'd have a movie that was its own thing and then like 20% set up
Hmm.
for whatever the next thing was going to be. And lately it seems like everything is all set up.
Yeah.
So I think that's going to be pulled back
Okay.
a little. So I mean, again, metatextually, that's what I think. I think that the plan probably was originally to do something like that, to set up Dark Reign. But I think that after this, it's gonna get name dropped that the scroll thing happened. Like the way that the Battle of New York was name dropped all the time in the Netflix shows. You know,
Yeah.
like it's going to be name dropped that like yeah, and after we dealt with that scroll thing, that Harrison Ford going, listen, we're going to deal with the scroll thing and that's all done now, so we need to see what we're going to do about this armor. um that like I think that's all you're going to get. I think this is never going to I don't think this is not going to be a major thing. Now maybe I'll be eating my words. Pull me in a year and let's talk about
Hey,
Even if you pull me in to talk about Star Trek, we can sidebar and go, "Hey, you said this. What do you think?"
Right.
And I will eat some of this piece of paper right here if I'm wrong. The minute that the scroll thing becomes a major thing again after the series, I will eat a quarter of this paper and swallow it.
Hashtag Justin eats paper. Psych.
Hashtag Justin eats paper. Hashtag Justin's off his meds.
Well, on that note, I feel like it's a great way to cap it. Justin, thank you so much, man, hopping on and dissecting this episode with me. Before I let you go, can you tell folks where they can find you?
Sure. I'm mostly active on Facebook because I'm 98 years old. But you can also find me at Ninja Director on Twitter. Right now, I'm talking a lot about the film I did with Tara Garwood, The Strangle of Ivy, where I was first AD. I wrote the music and I produced it. And that can be found at Terracotta, TARAKATA films.com. That's terracottafilms.com. You'll find out information on that's playing at festivals all over. I'm super, super proud of that. And some cool stuff happening in the future that I can't talk about yet.
Ooh.
But come on, say hi, get in touch. If you're a filmmaker interested in doing stuff like that, please let me know, because we may be in the next year looking for crew. And that's all I'll say.
Cool beans. So again, I want to thank JT for hopping on. I really do appreciate it. I'm your host, Brandon Troy, also co-creator of Movers and Shakers Unlimited. You can find me at Brandon Troy ENT, which you see down below, but also Brandon Troy _ ENT on Instagram. Next week, of course, we have San Diego Comic-Con happening. Should be an interesting con with all the
Nobody's
I know, with
there.
all the changes that have happened in the coming weeks, but for good reason though. For good reason. But just be on the lookout for that. I'll try to post, some of the things that are going on there of that edition show. And yeah, way more stuff on the way. So make sure you keep it locked. But thank you guys so much for watching. Be safe out there and see you soon.
See you soon. Solidarity with the writers and the actors.
Absolutely.
Woo.
Later, y'all.
Bye. Bye-bye, Trent.